Well, wonderful. It's really great to be here, and thanks for coming out. I grew up with my disability. I've always used a wheelchair. I have a form of muscular dystrophy called SMA, spinal muscular atrophy. And throughout my life, I didn't really think about my disability at all until people thought about it in front of me. It wasn't really a thing that was on my mind. I felt strong and healthy and very opinionated, and I had a lot of dreams, and I was quite convinced that I was going to be a Spice Girl at the time. But you know, I would meet people or be in situations that kind of felt a little like ick to me. And I'm just going to leave it at it was an icky feeling. It was a feeling as if people didn't understand what I knew to be true. They would look at me with like sad expressions, talk to me in like a baby voice when my younger sisters were not treated that way. I would show up somewhere that was not accessible, and it was in these experiences of barriers and stigmas and assumptions that I actually realized, okay, there's something going on here. And no matter how positive I would be or how opinionated or determined, there were real barriers that I was facing that other people were not. And I was frustrated and I was angry. I was increasingly angry that they didn't understand what I knew to be true. Because there was nothing inherently broken or wrong about just being born with a disability. It was the environment around me that was disabling. It was the stairs at the front of an entrance to an activity that my friends were all going to do that prevented me from being part of that experience. It was people's assumptions about what I was capable of that prevented me from showing them what I was capable of. And although I was only like maybe 10, 12 years old at the time, I knew that there was something here that I wanted to address. I wanted to explain to people, to show people what I was experiencing and the world through my eyes. So into high school and eventually university, I found photography as one of my first outlets. Photography for me was a way to communicate the things that I was seeing. It's interesting because photography for me actually started out of a challenge. I went to Markham, I went to Unionville High School, and when I was studying at Unionville in the theater program, every year we had this big trip to New York City. All right, so every year I went to this high school theater trip, and on this trip, we would go to New York, and it was a really big deal, and we would go see all the shows, and in grade 10, it's the first year that you get to go. So I remember I got to go on this trip, and I arrived in New York City, and my wheelchair did not arrive in the same condition. It was broken by the airline. And so here I am in New York City, and I can't keep up with my friends, and I can't do all of the activities, and I'm actually stuck at the hotel for like a whole day waiting for some type of replacement chair to get to me. Eventually, this not so sexy wheelchair arrives. It is a really slow, old school scooter that just was not my vibe as a young teen in grade 10 trying to be super cool, keep up with my friends. This was not a good look on me, but it was at least a form of mobility. So we ventured outside the hotel, and it was too slow to keep up with the class. It just wasn't really working very well. And so we just kind of made the decision that they would go ahead and I would do my own thing. So I stayed back with one friend and my mom who joined on the trip, and we just kind of explored the neighborhoods. And it was through exploring in the neighborhood that I started taking pictures with this like point and shoot little camera that I had brought with me to take pictures of me and all my friends. This was before iPhones, so I guess that dates me a little bit. And at the end of the day, they would all come back and talk about, all the things that they did and what they went to do and where they saw really cool things, and I had photos. And so I would show some of the photos of where I had been, what I had seen, and I really loved that ability to communicate, the ability to show people through my eyes, my experience, and bring them into the world that I was experiencing with not so many words. That led me on a path from a difficult moment where I was like pretty annoyed and angry and sitting in a hotel room and had to make a decision to just do something about it. And eventually I graduated high school. I remember the first job I ever did was my friend paid me $20 to take his headshots. I went into university and continued to take photos, and that experience followed me. There were a lot of inaccessible experiences that my friends had that I just could not be part of. But I had something that was mine. I had something that I cared about, which was photography. And so when they were out, at inaccessible venues in the city, I was building a portfolio. And that passion grew into something that really carried me through university, to the point where I actually got to go to an Easter Seals camp. It was my first time in my early 20s as a photographer, as a photojournalist, and was able to go to Camp Wood Eden and capture first-time campers. That eventually then turned into a photo exhibit that was shared at the Brookfield Place, downtown Toronto. It was an incredible experience. But it was a very full circle moment for me, where I went from feeling like I was constantly behind to having something unique that was only my own, and that many of my friends did not have, which was a passion that gave me a purpose. I followed that passion out of university and continued to take photos. I was able to sell a bunch of furniture in my basement on Craigslist and Kijiji and turn that into a makeshift photo studio. Took photos of my sisters and family members and started networking with people. And I put together a website, and I didn't put myself in my wheelchair on my website. I told people I wanted my work to speak for itself. I didn't want to be judged for being in a wheelchair. I didn't want to have less opportunities. And so I hoped that it would be enough. I wrote to agencies, and I would ask to have meetings with them. I wouldn't tell them I was in a wheelchair. I would show up, not really knowing what to expect. Sometimes those spaces would be accessible, sometimes they wouldn't. I would be met with all kinds of responses, but I was really just trying to do something on my own terms. I had a friend who was quite successful sit me down one day, and she was working in Hollywood in the movie industry. She grew up like in the same neighborhood as me, found her way into movies, and she said, why isn't there any picture of you in your wheelchair on your website? And I told her, I said, well, I don't want to be prevented from the same opportunities that a non-disabled person would have. And she told me something that took me a little while to come around to realize she was right. But she told me that it's one of the things that helped me stand out. That in a sea of photographers that all looked the same and acted the same, and primarily were white 40-something-year-old males, me as a 20-year-old woman in a wheelchair was unique and interesting. And she told me that if people didn't want to work with me because of that, then they probably weren't the right clients for me anyway. I knew she was right, because she usually was. But I didn't really believe it until I started putting it into practice. The day I put a picture of myself in my wheelchair on my website was the day I decided to start accepting my journey as who I am and on my own terms. A lot of people now say, oh, you're so confident, like you really have it all together. It didn't start that way. It started with small little decisions that pushed me to stretch, physically sometimes, but very much mentally, to push beyond the safety or the boundaries of what I thought I should do. And even just that journey to say, I'm going to be me from now on, even if I didn't know what me fully was yet, led me down the path of figuring out what my strength was on my terms. What I realized was that my strength was being authentic. Truly what my strength was challenging people to think differently by showing up in spaces that didn't allow or didn't consider disability before. I was challenging people to question what disability really was and question their own assumptions. So as a photographer, my whole goal was just to get photo gigs. And increasingly I did that. But what I loved about the experience of taking those photos was the advocacy that was happening. I was the photographer. And yes, I was sitting on a wheelchair. And the work was good, I have to say. And that grew within me to something that was really strong and powerful. I realized that one of the things that I loved the most was advocacy, the ability to challenge people's assumptions and create space not just for me, but hopefully for others to come along and do the same. So by the time I graduated university, I had a full portfolio. I had the chance to connect with people in the modeling industry, created some really good relationships, and one modeling agency in specific really took a liking to me. So I had graduated university and into my own career that I set on my own terms, which was being a photographer and taking portraits of all of the young models that needed basically like headshots so that they could promote themselves. That was a really empowering moment because I realized that I could do things on my terms. It wasn't easy, and there were many people who doubted, but it was possible. Fast forward to today, a lot has changed. I'm no longer working as a photographer. I am now running a company called AccessNow. It's a tech company that shares accessibility information about places all around the world. It's a company that started because everywhere I went was inaccessible, and I really wanted to solve for that problem. We've been able to share information about storefronts and community centers and theaters and parks and trails and hotels and really any kind of space that you might have a question about, and share information about the accessibility of those places. So if you had a question about whether or not it actually was wheelchair accessible, or if they had Braille menus at that restaurant, or if the lighting level was light or dim, or really any type of accessibility need, we've built a community of people who share information and contribute to that platform. The thing that has led me through all of the different moments in my life, from photography, which really was entrepreneurship, into tech and advocacy, and now also advocating for more accessible experiences on flights through our Rights on Flights campaign work, and working with the federal government to actually address those barriers. Along all of the different moments in my life, the thing that's led me to where I am is the passion that I've had for what I care about. And it's always something that when people ask me for one piece of advice, I always try to tell people to find the thing that you love. And it doesn't matter how big or how small it is, but if there is something that you love to do and something that you're good at, it doesn't matter if you haven't seen someone with a disability in that place yet. You can be the first person that demonstrates to others that there is space for disability in every field and in every passion. And maybe you guys already have those passions. Maybe you're already doing that work. And so I would love to hear from you, and if you have any questions about kind of your journey or even just sharing something that you're working on. There is a lot of power in your story. The way that I'm up here today and sharing my story is an invitation to bring people in. When you meet someone in any situation, that's an opportunity to create a connection. And often you're meeting people that might not understand the world of disability. But through storytelling and finding your story, you can invite people to be part of a world that is more accessible and more inclusive, because we all have stories. Regardless if you have a disability or you're a newcomer to Canada or you've been through some experience in your life that has caused friction or barrier or change, every person has a story, and that unites us. The stories that disability teaches us is the importance of creativity, the importance of working together in a community, the importance of staying committed even when things are tough. Those are the stories, those are the lessons that disability has taught me. And I'd love to hear the stories that it's taught you. So I'm gonna just create some space now for anyone who wants to share a story, a question, a comment. And I want to thank Easter Seals for inviting me in today to being part of this storytelling space. Thank you. So are there any questions or any brave voices that would like to contribute? So the question was, I'm an entrepreneur. What advice would you give to someone who wants to be an entrepreneur? I actually think that people with disabilities are natural entrepreneurs, because often we're provided a framework on the world that people don't have to think about. So a lot of the time, entrepreneurship is about making something new. The only way you are often challenged to make something new is if you just don't have open doors that set you on a path. Entrepreneurship starts with solving a problem. So you think about the problems in your own life, in your own lived experience, in friends, family members around you, and anchor yourself to something that you really want to solve. Disability has taught me that even though the front door is not accessible, I might find another entrance around the side of the building. Even though someone tells me no, I might get creative and adapt a piece of equipment or mount a microphone to a stand because it's too heavy to hold. That's entrepreneurship. That's the creativity that you need to be a good entrepreneur. So the first question is, what is the problem you're looking to solve? And what types of creative solutions can you bring to that problem to address it in a way that might not have been done before? And the third ingredient is resilience. The ability to keep going even when it's hard. When you're looking to address a problem, especially in entrepreneurship, there are 100 roadblocks as to why it won't succeed. When I was building the company, and even until recently, a million reasons why people would say no. That's not a good idea. I'm not going to help you with that. I don't have any money. I don't have any skills. I don't know how to code. There were a million reasons why I could have just said, this is too hard. I'm not going to do it. But the good entrepreneurs are the ones that keep with it. So you start by starting. You start by sharing your story, talking about the problem you want to solve, inviting people into your community, and you'll see soon enough people will be there if they believe in you, because you believe in yourself, to support you on solving each little barrier that comes along. But it really starts with you. It's not easy, and every journey is different, but it's a really exciting space to be. And I would say for a person with a disability like me and many others that I've met, we kind of have the opportunity, or I would say competitive advantage. I met a lot of people whose lives were a lot more simple, silver spoon, no real challenges. They've never been faced with an obstacle, and then the second they have, they don't know how to deal with it. But as a person with a disability, you have tools, and those tools are skills. It's just about finding how to use them in different settings than navigating inaccessible spaces or stigmatizing experiences. I hope that helps. But I would say that it starts with being able to articulate what you need. So, and for you to have the ability to do that as a student. So having your parents' support is important, and I learned a lot from my mom, but having the ability to say, this is what works for me, this is what doesn't, this is what help I will need. Most universities have a really great kind of accessibility division. Life at university, I lived in residence. I went to radio and television, so I studied media arts. There were a lot of experiences that were not accessible, but having something that was mine, passion for photography, helped me find my people too. Helped me find people that also were interested in creative arts, were also interested in what I was interested in. And so finding a way to be part of those events really helped me build a community. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening and being here, and I'd love to meet some of you afterwards as well. Thank you so much.